Chapter 1081, Village Chief, 2nd. Don't worry. In the beginning Gong Yi also took with those swords swung to clear them from his face, but later found out that there is no unavoidable situation at all, because they will gather more and more. And then frantically rushes in front of you, not knowing what to do. But the feeling of their stinky saliva dripping on their faces at this moment is really not good, so Gong Yi just catches them quickly, and then throws them out, which can quickly avoid them in a short time. Close to the human body. And from the current point of view, there are a few little foxes below that seem to have turned black after their fur is stained with this saliva. It seems that this thing should have a corrosive effect, and I can't let her touch myself. In that cave, is it possible that Mayer was corroded by this saliva, so he couldn't resist, causing so many wounds on his body, and now he has to return these wounds to them. At this time, waving the blue cherry in his hand, as if he also felt his own emotions, the sudden resonance, the two gathered together. The atmosphere between the world became, not much the same, and a huge light emanating from the two of them can be said to be that the village chief has not seen for so many years. But after seeing the expressions of the two of them, the village chief couldn't help but froze for a while. If he guessed correctly, this should be the legendary fusion of human and sword, but the two of them have known each other for a long time. Why is this happening? After thinking about it for a long time, I couldn't figure it out, so the village chief simply stopped thinking about such a thing. They must be related, and they must have come. Maybe they are all acquaintances, but why is the emotion and resonance at this moment? Unless it is the same thing that has been experienced, how can there be such an emotion? But everyone knows that, in fact, for two people, the emotions are different, but in the hate these lizards at the moment. The feeling is the same, they will take that Lan Yuxian's juice out, which proves that they must have a certain relationship with this thing. However, at this time, other things are slowly coming out of the water. If guessed correctly, Gong Yi is angry that Mayer was injured in the cave. After all, I have never seen people like this attracting people, and they come and go without a trace. This makes me more and more annoying, but it is not convenient to say anything more. After all, this place is not yet. When you are alone, you need to take all the little foxes behind you to take the test. So, Gong Yi took a deep breath, picked up the sword again, and pointed it directly at the lizards. At this time, they also seemed to feel a sense of fear, and several people stepped back one after another. Don't come forward anymore. No matter what the back of the huge lizard was making, they refused to take a step forward, as if they felt scared. At this moment, the headed Shinichibu screamed in anger. It was the first time that Gong Yi heard such a thing. Horse like a fox. Did they come from fox mutants? But they really don't look alike at all. But take a closer look, I found that the fur and their movements are very similar. Could it be that some mutated little foxes have even been stretched many times to become this hopeful appearance? However, their eyes seem to be useless, so this piece what the truth is surprised a bit. Don't they have any relationship between them that doesn't look alike? This lizard seems to be familiar with these little foxes, otherwise why did they not hurt any of the foxes from the beginning of the war until now? They are just coming at themselves, so this lizard will not hurt in the end. The little fox just chose a more dangerous target to attack. Putting these two together makes Gong Yi unable to analyze the truth of the matter at once, but at the same time, Gong Yi pays attention to it, that is to say, the attitude of the village chief and the actions of the village chief. Some things, he was afraid of those. The little fox surrounded himself, and then filled the place below. It can be said that, once the lizard falls on the ground, it will be stabbed by a lizard jumped down recklessly, and Gong Yi didn't hold him, and found that their battle was useful. Chapter 1082, Defense, 3rd. Those thorns pierced that lizard, they seemed to be dissolved, and then a huge loophole appeared on the limbs. Gong Yi was a little surprised when he saw this scene. Thinking of this, the little fox still has such abilities. If they had been exposed earlier, I wouldn't have to bury my head in this place alone, but at this time Gong Yi's angle couldn't see the look on the village chief's face, so I don't know what he was thinking. What? If what he thinks is the same as himself, maybe there is still room to solve this matter, but if he thinks from the beginning. In another aspect, he may be afraid that he will be recruited this time. After all, it's not up to you to say things yourself. Always doubt the original intention of the other party. Once they want to harm themselves, what should they do? But at present, if the two sides want to escape from this place, there is no more choice than cooperation, and this ground. At the same time as it continued to sink, another channel was sunken next to it. This made Gong Yi exhausted a bit. Due to his current size, he couldn't get in, so he made a push and pushed those. The little foxes were all pushed into the cave, and they were also in this crowd. They slowly followed along. Lan Ying looked back worriedly. Gong Yi waved his hand to indicate that there was nothing wrong with him. Such a strong physique and such a large body, unless the medicinal effect of this thing fails, otherwise it will have no problem to deal with these thoughts. It is impossible for them to worry about nothing behind them after they enter. Catch up, you're here. The place is also their last, although I don't know if they can believe in themselves. But this is the only thing I can do now is, after recommending the cave to all of them, there is a small rock beside Gong Yi to seal the hole, although it looks like a small stone to me this time. A stone, but it may be a huge thing for them, which can be used as a stone gate to seal the hole. At this time, they were also constantly walking inside, and suddenly they heard the sound of rolling stones behind them, and they couldn't help being a little scared, but it stopped after about 2 or 3 seconds. It should be Gong Yi who sealed the hole, but is it to stop the lizards from entering, or to stop them from coming out of this place? These people are all ignorant. Some sudden things happen, and no one can prevent them, but at this moment, it is obvious that there are some worries. After that, juice, it is probably just it lost its effect within an hour. But this time, after so long, he showed any trace of fatigue, which made Lan Ying worry. If the effect of the medicine wears off, then who will deal with those? He will be alone at that time. It doesn't help much, but it is also a care for each other, and there will be no life-threatening problems between them. But now he is the only one left, and Aruma next to him patted Lan Ying on the shoulder, as if to make her relax and stop worrying about Gong Yi. You also know that he can save himself from danger every time, and this time is of course no exception, and he has promised us that he will come back to us alive and wait for us on that pirate ship, so you must relax, don't always thinking about something in a mess. After hearing this, Lan Ying wiped away the tears on her face, as he said, Gong Yi is not as weak as he thought, and he can support this place alone, but alone, some other safety issues are always something to pay attention to. But you also know those outside. The lizard's offensive is so fierce, and he is only one person left. You said that if something goes wrong, who will help him? At this time, Aruma suddenly fell silent, too, and just like Lan Yuxian before, once that fruit's medicinal effect failed, or it was time, then those lizards would be after a fierce attack. Who could save him? At this moment, Aruma suddenly became worried. If it is really like what Lan Ying said, I am afraid that Gong Yi will meet in a short time to life-threatening. At this time, Gong Yi also felt that there was a power in his body that was slowly passing away, as if it was getting smaller with time, and that the medicinal effect of the juice can be said to be getting worse and worse, even slowly dissipating. And there are some after effects of dizziness. Chapter 1083, Sequelae. That the lizards give you can't be drunk casually. After all, it may harm you, but at this time, it is too late to think about it, so you have to deal with Gong Yi casually first, and take those lizards from yourself. After the site was cleaned up, I just found a small place to rely on. At this time, if you want to resist, you have to look at the situation around you. Their numbers are constantly being replenished, and they even feel like a steady stream. No matter which one you have reached, or it has no life characteristics at all, it will have another one to make up for it. I don't know where they came from, it is that kind of an endless stream of life that cannot be wiped out at all. After he had leaned against the wall next to him, Gong Yi didn't. He let out a sigh, and suddenly wanted to know what happened to them in the cave. After all, he was the only one outside, so he said not being able to get in touch is a reasonable thing. But my only purpose in this place, and the reason for supporting it, is to save them from it. After all, they are in this hole, and there is a big stone that needs to be pushed away, and what I need to do now is to keep this body. Status. After they come out of that place, help them push the stone away, but the danger has been lifted at this time. So Gong Yi wants to open the hole ahead of time. After all, he can detect it, and the power in his body is slowly disappearing. If you guessed correctly, the efficacy of this thing will be completely consumed immediately. At that time, let alone protecting them, I'm afraid that even himself will not be able to protect himself, so Gong Yi tried his best to hold up his body, ran to the side of the place again, and moved the stone away. Immediately following a loud noise, Gong Yi slumped to the ground like this, and then his body, which had grown bigger just now, was slowly shrinking to a normal state. At this time, Gong Yi was accompanied by such a stone and collapsed on the ground like this. When the little fox and Lan Ying and his party came out, they found that there was some cold Gong Yi lying on the body at the entrance of the hole. At this time, Lan Ying couldn't help but directly he jumped up and wanted to see if there was any change in him, but he found that his breathing was steady. However, the symptoms of Lan Yuxian are the same as before. It seems that the juice has the same effect and some sequelae. At this time, the village chief seems to see through the reason for this person, holding his small scepter to slow down. He walked over slowly and pointed a few times on the ground with his scepter. At this time, Bobo ran from the side and translated it for Lan Ying, that is. Asked if there was the one that Gong Yi took the juice from. Raw materials. At this time, Lan Ying was nervously rummaging through the bag, but he couldn't find it. To that little bottle. At this time, Aruma on the side could feel his anxious mood, and could even sense that she was about to cry. After all, Gong Yi was the one who had been with him for so long. If there was no such friendship, it would be too false. But that, the little bottle was like it had evaporated from this air and I couldn't find it. But the bag of juice collected by the chef before is still there, so Lan Ying handed this thing to the village chief, hoping that this can be successful, and then asked Bobo to explain to him that the juice in this small bag is that what was poured out of the bottle was just the cause of Lan Yuxian's illness last time. The one this time. The little bottle didn't know where it went. After Bo told the village chief shook his head. Lan Ying thought it was Gong Yi who was helpless, and then quickly began to cry. At this time, Bobo patted his shoulder and comforted him. The village chief just said that this thing is a little difficult and it will take a while. He just shook his head and just indicated that he needed 2 days. At this time, Lan Ying was stunned in place. She couldn't hold back the crying just now, and immediately floated up. At this time, everyone laughed. At this time, Lan Ying just felt that there was something unclear, so she didn't know. What are they laughing at? At this time, Bobo left with the village chief. The other party said that he needed his help if he wanted to conduct research. At this time, Lan Ying looked at Bobo with anticipation, but Aruma held him back. Do not want him to go. After all, he was afraid that the village chief would do something else. He hadn't forgotten about that last time. The village chief didn't say anything about death. He even planned to take Bobo directly. He must have other purposes. At this time, the village chief was just holding the scepter and that. The little bag looked at Aruma silently, as if he was communicating with Aruma in his eyes. After waiting for about 10 minutes, Aruma agreed to let him go. Bo left, but asked him to come back within the time he had set. Chapter 1084. Bobo. At this time, the village head looked at Aruma gratefully, but Aruma did not look at him. If it wasn't for him, how could Gong Yi become like this now? Moreover, now, everything has not come to this stage. If the juice cannot determine what the ingredients are and cannot successfully wake up Gong Yi, then Aruma and the others will directly set off and leave with Gong Yi. Now is waiting for this wave of good news. Can only be said that Gong Yi's situation is better than Lan Yuxian. His heart rate is normal, and the heart rate is stable, it can be said that it is like a drum beat, although the sound is weaker, but the basic frequency there are still some. But Lan Yuxian is different, just like the kind of life that is about to end. It was beating for a while, which made Lan Ying very worried. After all, although he was not a good person, he was still his father, and he had to take the responsibility of being her daughter. There is really no way, according to the ordinary situation for reference. And at this moment, Mayer has been wiping his demon sword for the past 2 days. I don't know what's on it. Could it be the last time I went to that cave with Gong Yi to explore something? Aruma tried to ask Meyer about it, but the other party kept trying to fudge her, as if she didn't want to face such a question. This was a bit surprising to her. Could it be that she was in the cave that time? What happened? Why did she contradict her so much? But no matter how she observed Meyer, the other party didn't reveal any flaws. However, like everyone else, she talked and laughed. Especially with Lan Ying, the relationship seemed to become better than before. This can't help but raise doubts in Aruma's heart. Usually, although the two of them have slapstick behaviors, they are not so conspicuous. Why does he seem to suddenly shift like Lan Ying's body? Later on, the mystery was revealed. When it was late at night, Mayer surreptitiously invited Lan Ying out and wanted to ask him about the ancient weapons. Although Charlotte said that his demon sword was very good, but you must know that it is still far from the 7 ancient weapons. So I wanted to ask you more about those things, but at this time I smiled so easily and said, the devil's sword is already one of the 8 ancient weapons and it can absorb the magic power in the surrounding air. There is no problem at all if you want to raise a rank in a short period of time. After hearing such an answer, Mayer couldn't help but be stunned for a while. And he didn't expect it to be like this. There is no use. And the last time I saw Gong Yi and picked up Lan Ying during the battle, I couldn't help but be a little surprised. After all, I am very envious of such a thing. With this sword, I can add several grades, but I didn't expect it. I have been doing it this way since I came into contact with this demon sword. And you have to remember that what is really useful and can be used is the level of human and sword unity. That is to say, if the two of you have to communicate with each other, there is also a sword spirit between this demon. He communicates and carefully feels the fluctuation of every breath, then you will understand what should be the real unity of human and sword. After hearing this, Mayer still wanted to ask, is there such a degree of cooperation between Gong Yi and Lan Ying? Lan Ying smiled and shook her head. Just because the situation was urgent, she let go of her vigilance, using the most primitive dependency on him. Only then did the two of them have a degree of cooperation. Otherwise, there would never have been such a situation in that war, and there would be no possibility of knocking down Lan Yuxian. In the end, both of them must be lost. Lying on the ground, so at that moment, Lan Ying did not take the initiative to control the sword. Instead, he used his usual reliance on the captain as a crew member to examine all of this. This is what Mayer couldn't help but sigh. If he and this demon can also reach such a level, let alone that one. Little Lan Yuxian, I am afraid that all the lizards are rushing up, and I can solve it by myself. It is precisely because of Lan Ying's words that since then, the demons have become a frightening weapon, because its master can cooperate with him to a high degree, and then knock down every incoming enemy. For him to become famous in the future. In fact, from another point of view, Mayer did not expect such a situation, but after finding Gong Yi, Mayer planned to immediately departing back to sea, not staying on land. Chapter 1085, Unforgivable. After all, it may still be possible to move freely at sea, and there is no need to worry about so many problems. The raid at sea is nothing more than the migration of seabed animals, plus some pursuits by admirals of the Navy, but there will always appear on land a variety of emergencies. So Mayer thought about it in his heart. If Gong Yi wanted to solve these things this time, he would definitely accompany him. But if he wants to continue to stay on this land, he should quit this pirate group and join another one. After they take him away from this place, he can choose what action to take next. After all, I originally planned to go home and take a look. The village should also be living well because of my departure. After all, I was heinous at the beginning. Thinking of this, Mayer couldn't help laughing softly, and Lan Ying, who was still sighing about the unity of man and sword, was suddenly stunned for a moment. I didn't expect that Mayer would snort to himself suddenly, and Aruma who was behind didn't even think of it, and then immediately he clenched the weapon in his hand, thinking that Mayer was going to launch an attack on Lan Ying, and win the new area, one of the 7 ancient weapons, that he had done. But at this moment, Mayer apologized, saying that he just thought of the image that he was not popular as a demon king in the village at the beginning, and then remembered it, and felt that they were very cold-blooded, but now I think about it they are just for their own life. When he wakes up, if you don't leave, I'll get up and go back alone. After all, I haven't gone back for a long time. I have to see if they are living well, if they don't have me better. Lan Ying didn't know how to comfort Mayer in front of him. He was a very decadent look. I feel the same way myself. Even when she was young, Lan Yuxian just regarded herself as an item that could be sold at will. At that time, she might have been more saddened than her. In the same way, I have never been seen as a real person by others. At this time, Gong Yi had suddenly woken up, and found himself in a white environment, with a small boundless box under his feet. He couldn't see it, nor its width. He only knew that a gust of wind gently came from it blew across his face, but it was difficult to judge the direction, as if there was such a wind in every direction. So it makes Gong Yi feel uncomfortable at this time. After all, the current situation is completely beyond his control. It can even be said that there are some undetermined factors. Before he can react, it has already happened to this point. Now, Gong Yi's memory is still stuck in the period when he was in a coma before, so now, where exactly is he? Gong Yi easily tested whether there was anyone around, but found that there was no sound at all, just like a stone ocean without any sound. The waves were the same, but at this time, no matter how Gong Yi shouted, there was no echo around him, only his own voice could be heard floating in this space without any support. Maybe in the past, this kind of situation was very common, but this time it was different. I was in a coma. If the soul was taken out by someone, it might be difficult to go back in the end. So at this time, Gong Yi naturally knew what kind of importance this was, so he kept testing, walking on those waters, only to find that there would be ripples when his footsteps fell, but he didn't. It doesn't mean there will be some other reaction. So at this time, I was also very anxious, for fear that I would accidentally do something else, but until the ripples slowly dissipated, Gong Yi didn't notice anything else. The incident happened, anyway. Those ripples disappear, there will be no other pictures. Instead, a voice suddenly appeared, as if to remind him what kind of place he was doing now, but this voice seemed to keep his attention and listen to him, but I don't know why. Gong Yi at this time is always distracted, always look aside. Pay attention to this side. I'm just summoning your soul. There are some things I need to explain to you. In the cave you went to, there is a man in black, who is the ancestor of our juice, and the only one he was able to make it, and what you drank is the last can we have. Chapter 1086. Explore the Third. After hearing this, Gong Yi didn't. Yuda's slightly surprised lover, although he only heard the voice and didn't see the person, but the content of what he said was already reminiscent and shocking. He didn't expect this thing to be a person, it was specially made, and I thought it was naturally formed. After all, who would have such a mind? But now that I hear such shocking news, I can't help but admire it, but at the same time Gong Yi also thought of another point, how to wake up this thing. Presumably future generations who study this thing will also understand, so it is said that in Gong Yi's temptation under the eyes, the other party was silent for a while, but he replied, anyway. It's nothing more than that. And besides, water, there are only some inexplicable liquids left in this place, and all kinds of ripples can be turned up under one's feet, but there is no entity. Did they have to go through some imagination to be able to shape them? Listen to that voice while speaking. Gong Yi on the other side began to slowly operate these water, hoping to gather them together by his own will, but at the same time this is not an easy thing. at least in the eyes of them, they not subject to its own actions. But they can resonate with their own thoughts. It can be said that they are able to perceive some of their own thoughts and the actions that they want them to do, but they may not be able to do it so properly for some other reasons. But at the same time, the voice also talked about the liquid, as long as the destined people can control it, and can let him lead these destined people out of this place. So now that he has been screened in, he may be considered it's a half-hearted person. The voice disappeared after speaking here, and there are no other words. No matter how Gong Yi summoned him in the air, the voice did not appear again, as if the world had evaporated, and at the same time, at this moment, Gong Yi also discovered another point. There were always rustling voices coming from nearby. If you guessed correctly, there should be objects moving around here, and you are not big. Convenient, go check its existence. After all, there is still water in this place. If you are really destined, controlling this thing to make it fly, and then attacking that thing is not a problem at all, but at this time I am just an ordinary person. Are you there? Awkward atmosphere in the air. With Gong Yi's own voice, it seemed to be transmitted in a loop. This place is lingering, and it makes me feel very noisy after it is superimposed. But there is no way to leave a place. As if feeling Gong Yi's mood, those liquids suddenly flew from the ground, forming a wall of water around him. After surrounding Gong Yi, not only those sound is blocked. Can even be seen that these sounds were absorbed directly into the interior of the wall as if they were being built, but Gong Yi couldn't hear any sound, so he couldn't help but be surprised at this time. If there is the ability to operate water, then it is naturally a good thing. And at this time, something similar to a fruit suddenly appeared inside the wall, but it looked like an ordinary food without any peculiarities. But you must know that there are no ordinary things that appear in this place, right? So Gong Yi wanted to reach out and catch him, but the thing floated quickly in the air, preventing Gong Yi from getting close to her. Half a step, I don't know what the purpose is. He appeared in this place, and this place was only by himself, and he didn't let him get close to him. Could it be that he wanted to get it by his own strength? After thinking of this, Gong Yi slowly controlled those. Water the wall, approached her little by little, and then quickly pounced on it, using a water ball to condense to this place, and then pull the water ball back in front of him. Gong Yi stretched out his hand and took out the fruit. It has to be said that the fruit is crystal clear. It looks like a crystal, and it does not look like a food that can be consumed. Therefore, Gong Yi hesitated for a while at this time, but when he squeezed it, he found that the thing was soft, but it was a little strange. In desperation, Gong Yi couldn't care so much. He raised his head and sent the fruit into his stomach. When the thing was swallowed from his throat, he only felt a cold feeling passing through his throat, and the rest of the details didn't really feel much. But that's enough, isn't it? And I have to say that this fruit looks beautiful. Chapter 1087. Fruit. If it wasn't for eating, I could leave this place. I might put this beautiful fruit into something for viewing, but I didn't have so much time to hesitate at this time. Such Gong Yi inherited his second ability, the previous Doden Earth style that he acquired from Martial Tucci, and then slowly disappeared without even a trace of water and water. Soil is inherently incompatible, so it's better if it disappears, so as to avoid problems when it is used. But at the same time, the water was rippling, and some strange things appeared in front of Gong Yi. After all, that crystal fruit was directly digested in his body after it went down from his throat. But it can also be seen that when it has not been completely digested, his body is like a light, and all the skeletal parts and some other places can be displayed. There are even some bright light distinctions, so at this moment, Gong Yi is helpless all of a sudden, hoping that after getting this fruit and digesting it, this dimension is throwing itself out of this place, but although he did not show such emotions. Maybe that thing could read minds. He left himself in this place and let himself experiment for a while after the fruit was completely digested. Indeed, this water can be manipulated. And it can be changed into any shape according to one's own mind, so that it will be more convenient to be on the sea in the future, whether it is to avoid the pursuit of those admirals, or some other problems. At this moment, all the truth is exposed. But there is one thing that makes Gong Yi in some trouble. That also means that once the fruit in his body is known, it may lead to death, so at this time Gong Yi is not quite sure what to do, but the only thing he knows is, anyway, you must protect the people around you. The power of this fruit is a beginning. The main thing is to quickly digest these things, and then you can leave this place to find them. I don't know if Lan Ying and the others can wait for them to go out from this place. After all, some things are still unknown, and I don't know when they will be able to digest this fruit. But just between the lightning and the flint, the fluorescent light suddenly disappeared, and the cave returned to its gray look as before, and there was not even anything that could light up this place. At this time, Gong Yi realized that his volition had come true. But this place is too dark. I can't see anything, which means that if I want to carry out any action next, it will be a blind eye, but at the same time it is a good thing. At least this fruit is digested when it's over. It's a lot easier to leave this place by yourself, and I don't know who perceives me. I didn't expect that I would be teleported out of this place very soon. Could it be that this place can successfully transmit me out of this place through the induction of my companions? After having such an idea, Gong Yi will meet them after going out. But found that only his soul was floating in the air, and all the people were around his bed, with a look of sympathy on their faces, as if they were about to die. Such a scene, even Gong Yi himself couldn't help but feel a little awkward, but the person lying on the bed was pale, there was no blood on his lips, and he didn't look like this soul floating in the air at all. The village chief on the side seemed to see himself. He felt that the scepter was aimed at Gong Yi, the soul body that was floating in the air at this time, and then the soul body quickly fell to the ground. It has to be said that at this time, no one could know what happened next. But while lying on the bed, Gong Yi suddenly woke up, and at this time he also opened his eyes. His fingers were constantly moving, and the whole person should have returned to his control. At this time, Gong Yi was also quite surprised. He didn't expect that the village chief could be so powerful, and he would be able to restore his body to its original state in a blink of an eye. If he had done such a thing earlier, it wouldn't have been so difficult. But at this time, Gong Yi actually prefers to have another choice. If possible, it would be easier for the village chief to teach himself such a trick to summon souls in the future, but at this time Gong Yi also understands the truth. Can be too greedy. I have already obtained a new fruit. I have the ability to control the water, and I will be on the water in the future. Overlord, others will not be able to catch up with me, and there is no need to say anything else at this time. If those admirals want to, if you come to chase after yourself, you have to fight against your ability to control water first. It is estimated that your value will start to rise again. Please download Fei Lu's novel. See the latest chapter. Baidu search 99 playmates find 99 novels. Chapter 1088. Control the water first. After all, the difficulty of catching herself is also getting higher and higher, but at the same time, Lan Yuxian has not woken up, which surprised Gong Yi. But after recovering for 2 or 3 days, Gong Yi and others the people negotiated, hoping that they can leave this house for a while, and of course Lan Ying himself may give Lan Yuxian some treatment. After all, he also drank that juice this time, but at this time the village chief suddenly appeared beside Gong Yi, and his eyes signaled him to come out of it. Gong Yi would naturally not refuse. After all, if it wasn't for the help of the village chief, her soul would not be able to come back this time, and when she was floating in the air, as if she saw Lan Yuxian's soul, she smiled at herself, and there was still a bit of that smile. The mind is divided into evil and charming, but it should be more of guilt for Lan Ying. After all, it has been floating in the air for such a long time, and I should be able to see Lan Ying taking care of him before and after running. Even when the people from the 4 emperor thieves were together, they should not have gotten sick in Lan Yuxian. Time to help him. At this time, Lan Yuxian didn't know how to get back to his body. After all, such a thing as being out of the body made him feel a little helpless. If you guessed correctly, this juice is actually a stealth spot for chauffeurs. As long as someone discovers this juice, a certain exchange will be made. However, in this exchanged place, some processes and endings are defaulted. Only after the soul is exchanged, can you be qualified to obtain this ability after drinking the juice. Therefore, Lan Yuxian and Gong Yi both encountered such a situation, but the degree between the two is different. Someone guided Gong Yi, but Lan Yuxian did not have to say that this may be a personal fate. And in the process of guiding, Gong Yi even had the ability to control the water. At this time, the village chief called him out and discussed the recent situation with him. I can see that you have a new ability, but you must know that if you use Lan Yuxian for treatment, this ability will be contaminated. The only way is to isolate the source, keep half of it in the body, and then separate it out. A small half is used for the treatment of Lan Yuxian. Only a small part is polluted in this way, and the remaining half can be brewed into a new individual, otherwise, your whole body will be gone by then. Do you think it will still be useful at that time? After hearing this, Gong Yi was stunned for a moment. What he said seemed to be the truth. If he really believed in doing this, he might end up with numbness. And now it seems that everything is not as simple as what I thought, and if according to the words of the village chief, the ability to control water in the future will have some such juice on it, then for Gong Yi nature is a good thing. It can purify the effect of such a juice by itself. The other side can also use this thing freely. The combination of the two is a good thing. So Gong Yi looked up at the village chief after thinking about it. The village chief waved his scepter to adapt. Gong Yi, no. You need to talk to him again. Just do whatever you want, and you can take care of the rest by yourself. At this time, Gong Yi also understands what kind of hard work the village chief is, because he saved them. Little foxes, so the village chief can only take care of himself. Otherwise, why did Lan Yuxian stay in the air for so long? No one has summoned the soul back. It's not because he hurt these. When the little fox, Lan Yuxian was also one of them. If it wasn't for the fact that I tried my best to block Lan Yuxian's attack, it is estimated that everyone would have no way out in this place at this time. Although the village chief's evaluation was very useful, it only blocked a part of the attack. That's it. And when Lan Yuxian attacked the last time, there was a crack in that barrier. If you guessed correctly, when the next attack is launched, it should be shattered into ashes. But at this time Gong Yi and Lan Ying appeared. Gong Yi, who was holding the sword without hesitation, used the ability to travel underground and successfully took down Lan Yuxian in one fell swoop. At this time, Lan Ying, who turned into a sword, was actually it's very sad, after all that is his biological father. As a sword, he directly pierced his heart. If he speaks of himself, I am afraid that Gong Yi will not be able to accept this reality. This is the best thing to do. At the same time, Gong Yi also decided to do it in a short time. Departing back to the sea, after all, the land is still not very safe. And having the ability to control the water is a good thing, but it can't be said. Chapter 1089. Exchange Blood. Don't worry, village chief, I have already decided that Lan Yuxian will definitely be saved. As for this purification ability, I think I should have a way to adjust myself. At this time, I can only comfort myself. After all, Gong Yi is not sure if there will be any side effects or consequences. But looking at Lan Yuxian, as Lan Ying's father, he hurt himself, and he must take care of himself. He was successfully rescued. The village chief sighed at this time, and took out something like a jade pendant from his chest, so Gong Yi lowered his head, and when he helped Gong Yi put the jade on, he used that scepter gently knocked on the jade pendant. At this time, something like a little monster emerged from it. It was a mass of gray gas. It was constantly posing in the air and forming various characters. It was communicating with Gong Yi. At this time only then did Gong Yi realize that he didn't expect this to be a wise thing. Moreover, this gas can be placed in any shape, and finally he turned into a mass like smoke, and then returned to zero and disappeared into the air. At this time, Gong Yi touched the jade pendant on his chest again. He was constantly heating up, and it seemed that the thing should have returned to his jade pendant. This is not his own management, let alone the above things, but now it seems that this black gas should be left by the village chief to help him, it seems that he still does not have so much hatred for himself. After all, I was helping those people in this place before. There are a lot of things about the little fox. If it is not necessary, no one should want to target each other. After all, at that time, not only will they hurt each other, but they may even affect themselves and the people around them. No one should do this kind of thing that hurts 1001 self and 800. Come out. Well then, you understand this essence. I will let you go. After all, only you can help us now. This Sea Fox clan rejuvenation. I must make sure you are good before you help us buy this thing to rebuild. Be safe, otherwise, if your life is at stake, who should you turn to? After hearing this, Gong Yi realized that everything is a transaction, and no one will take care of everything for you for no reason. Tormenting so much is just a waste of time after all. But at the same time, we must also understand that Lan Yuxian is the one who must save him now. When Sakura cooperated with him, he has already absorbed everything from him. How can he be considered a competent captain? As the head of the pirate group, it is my responsibility to ensure that everyone on the ship spends every day happily, and the most troublesome thing for me now is. After all, Lan Ying killed his father by himself. Now I'm in a coma again, because of the juice I've taken, it's become like this. I drank that juice myself, so I said that I have the right to speak, and now I have also proposed to treat him. Everyone believes in themselves, even Lan Ying believes that he is a pirate. The leader of the group cannot let any of the group members down. After all, this is his responsibility. Only after such things are completed, can he be qualified to walk slowly along with him. But there is one thing that I can't imagine, that is, Lan Yuxian is not so much to me. A lot of respect, in addition to malice, it's just constantly threatening myself. Of course, if you want to save it, you need to slowly extract the juice from his body, so that you can get a new Lan Yuxian in the future, but at the same time, the blood in his body may also need to be replaced. This place is the only one with him. Lan Ying was the only one who matched, so there was no other way, so Lan Ying could only do it. After reaching such a conclusion, Gong Yi communicated with Lan Ying and planned to replace half of the blood of Lan Yuxian while evaporating that juice. Of course, it cannot be replaced by Lan Ying, only one blue Ying is needed. The blood is enough for him to make a nutrient transport. The remaining half is directly replaced with water under his control, so that if he wants to harm these people later, there is a way to control it. Lan Ying nodded and agreed and didn't stop her. As long as she could save people, she could accept everything except amnesia herself, so things would be much easier to handle. With the help of the blood, Gong Yi slowly brightened the juice residue in his body, and then once again poured the other half of the water along the. Not to mention that this is indeed an extremely fast method, at least it can replace more than half of the dangers. To see the underlined version of the novel, please download Fei Lu's novel. Read the latest chapter and LT. Chapter 1090, Visit 3rd. At this time, Lan Ying was worried outside the door. I don't know if it was because she was afraid. At this time, Gong Yi did something to Lan Yuxian, or she was afraid that something would happen to Gong Yi during the treatment. Aruma watched Lan Ying at this time. He kept circling in front of him, and then he grabbed Lan Ying in front of him. Stop going around in circles. Is it possible that Gong Yi can still eat Lan Yuxian? And this time, he is probably quite sure, otherwise, how could he apply? You know, he knows very well that Lan Yuxian is your importance, and the rest of the journey should begin soon, but only if he can take people with him. And now it can be seen that there are many people who are not very convinced. It may be because of Lan Yuxian's command error this time, but we still know that they have some good intentions. If it is not because of him, if so, Lan Yuxian's life should be endangered this time. After hearing this, Lan Ying nodded frantically. It was precisely because it could save people, so she said that she would let him in with confidence. Otherwise, if it was an ordinary person, she would have already started rushing outside by this time. People. After all, although such things are uncommon, there are always some people who want to approach Lan Yuxian. Some claim to be his former teammates, and some are inexplicable people, just to visit the original giant, but they don't know what price was paid behind this giant. Was unconscious for a long time, plus some other things, until now he is still like this. If someone told him back then, Lan Yuxian would be like this, then Lan Ying it's the first one who won't believe it. After all, let's not say whether my father is competitive or not, how could he suffer such a loss just because of his careful thinking? I think this time, I also believe in that. Pirates, after all, the 4 emperor thieves, I am afraid also want to cut the weeds. But fortunately this time, Lan Ying was in this place, and there were so many companions next to him to help, and especially Gong Yi this time. He took care of everything for himself before and after running, and Aruma next to him also paid a lot. While Bobo is an effort for some comprehensive deployment of this place. Let the village chief understand that his father is not a bad person, he just took it away and took an extreme measure. At this time, he does not know what the village chief can do. But for Gong Yi, there is still a little bitterness in his heart. If he hadn't been so tenacious and stayed in this place, his father wouldn't be like this, but if he knew the truth, he would definitely I regret thinking like this. From the beginning, Lan Yuxian didn't think of regret, and the reason why Gong Yi came back to Lan Yuxian was, I didn't want to be sad all the time, but it didn't mean I agreed with me and I was a good person, and at this time I was those who want to sing. The little foxes continue to be wary of this man, after all, his mind is too weird. Before he was called back by the village chief in the air just now, he saw his dead soul constantly smiling at him strangely. If he guessed correctly, he should have other plans in mind. Otherwise, how could he look at him like that? But it is inconvenient for him to say some things. After all, there is still someone who really thinks his father is so good. In front of him, Lan Ying, who seldom sees Lan Yuxian. After doing that thing before, my emotions were completely collapsed, and the whole person could not accept it. At this time, it is not convenient for me to add fuel to the fire, and I don't want to hurt him again because of his father. The previous blow was already big enough, and I don't know how to describe it. Anyway, now it seems that this is an easy task, at least it should be no problem for me, but Lan Yuxian, who is fighting the fire, needs another point, that is, sincerity. I don't know if he has this thought. If he can't let go of some small grievances in his heart, then this time he still can't come back, even with Lan Ying's blood as the sole guide in the middle. There is no way to successfully return to this world, that is life. Well, maybe he is destined to have this catastrophe, and there is no way to avoid it. Wait for his companions to rescue him. Maybe he can't do anything. After all, they are all people from the 4 emperor thieves, and there will definitely be some way, but they are just scumbags who follow Lan Yuxian. But I must have heard the legend of such a fruit, but Gong Yi still took great pains to help with the treatment. At this time, Lan Yuxian's soul was directly summoned into the body. Gong Yi did not see the process, so he did not know whether it was successful or not. Now, this is Gong Yi frowning. Chapter 1091, Success. If you guessed correctly, it should be a success. After all, at the moment when she finished work, Lan Yuxian's eyes twitched. After seeing this scene, Gong Yi just pushed the door directly. Before I could say hello to Lan Ying, the other party rushed in like a fly, and we all saw that, after the person on the bed really made a movement, he ran over and hugged Gong Yi again. The scene, his most sincere apology, but this time also made Gong Yi a little reluctant to tell him the truth. Lan Yuxian herself may have another plan. After hearing the truth, Lan Ying couldn't help but feel a little uncomfortable. I believe that I just bought it, but someone told me that he had with bad intentions. I want to kill everyone like me. How can I resist under such circumstances? After all, my father's habits, including some of his style, have been known to me long ago. But what do you say? Do you want to let yourself do all this over again? At least now it seems that this is definitely an unfeasible thing, and at this moment Gong Yi found out that Lan Yuxian's hand seemed to keep shaking. As if it were appropriate to let people pass by. At this time, Gong Yi suddenly stopped, no matter what the sound's past pace was. Since he knew that he had some conspiracy, Lan Ying didn't refute violently just now. At least it proves that he was such a person before, and it should not be a rare situation to do something like this. So now I have to defend some of the interests of this place, and I have to let all people survive successfully in this place. After all, this incident was originally unexpected, and it is difficult to let all people because of this incident. Do you lose your life for a trivial matter? At least from this point of view, you will definitely not tolerate it. At this time, Gong Yi also looked at Aruma, who was asking for his opinion. After all, he couldn't overturn all these things because of one thought of his own. So it is necessary to refer to everyone. It proves that Gong Yi is not an autocratic dictator, otherwise Lan Ying will regret it at that time, but he can't take this responsibility by himself, and once Lan Ying really hates himself if so, there is a problem. He was originally one of the 7 ancient weapons. Once he was hated by him, he might be locked by him for the rest of his life. Then, no matter if he fled to the end of the world, Kakuzu would be retrieved by him, but he didn't want to. This way. And I don't want to have a grudge against him. I'm a good friend. Who can tolerate it? Later, I do and know why. Lan Ying naturally believes in Lan Yuxian, but Gong Yi. Lan Yuxian seems to be deceiving them this time. But at this time Lan Ying believed him so much, and it was inconvenient for her to say anything more, so she could only remind him next to her. After all, she was just an ordinary captain. If she was willing to believe in herself, then there should be something like that. Beware of mind. At Lan Yuxian's physical condition. At this time, Gong Yi didn't. Shaking his head freely, this time Lan Ying was afraid that something would happen, so he could only help him by the side. He thought about it for a while, but he couldn't stop all his thoughts. After all, at this time, he may feel that his family is more important than them, because he has experienced the death of his family in front of him. After all, in the Battle of Anti, Gong Yi originally planned to save him, but because of the fierce attack of the opponent, and all the attacks were locked on Anti, if he saved him, he could not be like that. After deliberating between them, I can only choose the little girl in front of me. So this time there are some things that are the same as the last time. If I had launched an attack that day, the only thing I could save was that child. And this time, the restoration of this small village will depend on Luo zipping. If Lan Yuxian can be driven away, it can also reduce a lot of losses, so as not to wait until Gong Yi and the others leave. Lan Yuqiandu has launched an attack again, so when the time comes, the little fox will be in trouble. Although he didn't doubt that they would be able to deal with him, it still took a certain amount of time, and once Lan Yuxian really woke up, they would definitely not be able to complete it so smoothly. Moreover, it can be seen from the situation just now that Lan Ying must have softened her heart. She should have a deep memory in her heart about the last time she dealt with his father, otherwise how could she have tried her best to stop Gong this time? All Yi's actions, even preventing Gong Yi from dealing with Lan Yuxian. Chapter 1092, Room. But there is no way. If I have room to turn around, I don't want things to be so rigid. After all, I hope everything can develop peacefully, but after all, it seems that there is no way out now. Therefore, before leaving, Gong Yi understood that he could no longer have any specific communication with Lan Ying, so he specially instructed that if there was any problem with Aruma on the side, he must inform himself Aruma as soon as possible at this time. He also agreed and then entered the room with Lan Ying to see Lan Yuxian. At this time, Lan Ying suddenly let out a scream, and then Gong Yi quickly turned back and rushed in, only to find that Aruma was already lying on the ground, and the one with a knife in his hand did not know who killed it. Yes, but the blood on the knife was very obvious. At this time, Lan Ying was holding the knife, and after seeing Gong Yi rushing in, she tried her best to explain that she didn't do it herself. It's really not me, you have to believe me, it was indeed my father who rushed over and dragged her down, and then shoved the knife into my hand. I don't understand what happened. Calm down and tell me where Lan Yuxian is. Gong Yi no. She reassured Lan Ying and told him to calm down and stop feeling like that. At this time, Lan Ying also took a slow breath and followed the method he taught herself, and she slowly calmed down. Only then did I tell Gong Yi that Lan Yuxian was sitting at the back. The window left Gong Yi, and he didn't think much about learning it. The machete in his hand chased after him. At this time, Lan Ying patted the place under the bed, and then let Lan Yuxian come out of that place, and warned him to leave quickly and not to cause trouble in this place. At this time, Lan Yuxian agreed, and then before leaving, I hugged Blue Sakura. I really didn't expect you to be my good daughter. All these things are planned for me, but this kid is. It's a pity, if it can be cured, forget it, the chances of this are not high. After saying this, he left directly. Lan Ying looked at his back and couldn't help but think deeply. If it weren't for the fact that he was his father and the guilt he felt before, he would definitely not have saved him this time. He should also make up for the regret in his heart. After all, it was because of himself that the problem happened last time, but Lan Ying also discovered another point. After he turned around, Gong Yi stood at that window and never left. At this time, Lan Ying couldn't help but glanced in surprise. He then glanced at Aruma who was lying in front of him. At this time, Aruma also got up and patted the dust on his knees. At this time, Lan Ying was naturally don't know what happened. Gong Yi didn't plan to tell him either, but Aruma on the side smiled, then patted Lan Ying on the shoulder and took her back directly, but the machete was still in Gong Yi's hand from beginning to end up. From that time on, Gong Yi has already known, this is an illusion, after all, the blood on this knife is not real at all, it is just some paint. Even when looking at this paint, there will be reflections. In this case, I am afraid that a fool will know that this thing is fake, but he has not dismantled it. Then let's take a look at the sound to see if he really wants to betray. This pirate group can't be considered a betrayal. In the face of family affection, this pirate group may not be anything. If you give yourself a chance, let yourself still have relatives, and you will definitely choose them. After all, they may be more important to me. After all, everything is an unknown number, but at this time I don't have any complaints about those. How much I complained, I just saw this machete and thought of something other things. He probably didn't completely break away from that. 4 Emperor Thieves, because this machete should be given to their team after they retire from the pirates, so he took this knife, which means that the 4 Emperor Thieves people should still be alive on this island. Therefore, I must find out all the dangers in a short period of time, otherwise, it will be troublesome if those little foxes suffer. And after a while, he will accompany Meyer back. After all, he should miss the sea very much, and he has the ability to manipulate water. This time, he will swim in that place, and this time he will even the admiral couldn't catch himself. Don't know what kind of calculus the 4 Emperor Thieves are playing. Since Lan Yuxian has already retreated, why did they still use such a machete to kidnap him in that place? Good to speculate on the problem here. Chapter 1093, Chain Reaction. Once the direction is wrong, then a series of problems will appear in the chain reaction. Icon. There are many various patterns on this dagger, which cannot be seen. It should be something like a marker. I don't know why this happens. But it seems that it must be hinting at some unique signs. After Gong Yi copied all these things, he returned the dagger to Lan Ying. At this time, he felt guilty. After all, he acted in a play, let that person leave, and even deceived his companions, but he was also helpless. After all, if he did not do this, the rest of the matter would be a very complicated process. I didn't want everything to be like that, and I didn't want to be embarrassed because Lan Yuxian was caught in the middle, so I let go. If he can come back again, or come back to find trouble, then I have a reason to drive her away again, and even let him never come back. Even if he dies, he has nothing to do with me. Relationship, but not now, I have to ensure the safety of everyone. After all, before leaving, Lan Yuxian did not forget to threaten himself. If Lan Ying refused to let Lan Yuxian leave, then he could drink another bottle of juice and let everyone stay here. Place to accompany him to death. So at this moment, no matter how much Lan Ying wanted to keep him, there was no way. After all, as long as Gong Yi rescued him, all these things would be out of his control. Even so, Lan Ying didn't tell them this fact. Anyway, if they were really brothers, they would definitely not have any doubts about themselves. Sure enough, all the members of this pirate group were in their hearts. Communicate with each other. Because at this moment, no one did not believe Lan Ying, and everyone even handed him a piece of toilet paper, or some small biscuits, etc. After all, Lan Yuxian suddenly it disappeared in between. Everyone knew that before that. The sinner must have a reason to leave. Although this child usually seems to be flirting with other people, he doesn't pay attention to other problems with his clothes, but in reality, everyone knows that thinking is much more delicate than ordinary little girls. Lan Yuxian did it before. After so many things that I'm sorry for her, this time it is estimated that Lan Ying's heart should not be able to cross this hurdle. But one must also understand that a person is just an ordinary companion, and Lan Ying himself is the one who really makes the decision. Since he has decided to let the man leave, the rest of the people can no longer be attached to anything. Even the leader of the pirate group Gong Yi is not qualified. After confirming and affirming that there are no more 4 emperor thieves on this island, Lan Yuxian's people have all surrendered to Luo Ziping and Shi Lu's subordinates. In this case, it will also reduce the construction of these little fox homes, a long time of trouble and obstacles. And at this time, Gong Yi also plans to set off directly. Mayor is undoubtedly very happy during this period. After all, this time is his own trip home. If he can stop at the place of his home port for a while, go back and have a look. It's also good, after all, after being out for so long, I didn't say hello to the house. After all, there is no time to go through so many hardships, and it can be said that Meyer wields this demon sword in a very smooth stage. Waiting for Gong Yi to give some pointers, and after Gong Yi put everything on the boat, he saw Meyer wielding in that place, and the selected GG brilliance on his demon sword proved it. It's actually a really good sword. But unfortunately, he was a lack of spirituality. After Gong Yi watched for a long time beside him, he came down when Meyer was tired, and then inserted the sword into the wooden board beside him, asking himself, what about the comments from the sword practice just now? It's nothing, it's just. I think you can't achieve the unity of the human and the sword, you can't use it as an accessory, you have to think that he is your companion, so that you can have some other emotions. And you have to understand a truth, if you really want to solve everything, then there is no other way, and the point is, there is no cooperation between the two of you. After hearing this, Meyer was stunned for a moment. She didn't seem to expect that Gong Yi would talk about such a topic, but at this time she also wanted to know that things like the unity of the human and the sword are just a legend. Who can do it in reality? Chapter 1094. But at this time, Gong Yi called Lan Ying up, and after telling him about it, a shy Yuhi color appeared on Lan Ying's face. After all, Gong Yi always made such a request. Have some troubles. At this time, Gong Yi couldn't help turning a Byakugan after seeing her ashamed expression on Yuhi's face. After seeing this look, Lan Ying couldn't help laughing out loud, and Meyer was also here, but at this time, suddenly that turned into a sword, Gong Yi, and when he picked it up, Meyer didn't react at first. It turned out that the sword that stabbed Lan Yuxian at the beginning, since it was Lan Ying herself, no wonder so many people took care of him during this time. Just thinking about going to sea and returning to his hometown, he didn't care about his side at all. What happened to my comrades? Didn't expect him to assassinate his biological father like this. I'm afraid it was very uncomfortable during that time. Watch yourself dancing the sword in this place. At this time, the two are integrated together. Lan Ying's fitness and Gong Yi's movements are well integrated with each other, and the moves can be said to be fluent, and they can directly take each other within a few moves. Head on the item. At this time, Meyer also recorded these moves. Maybe he could use them in the future, and the demons beside him seemed to feel the fluctuation of the sword energy next to him, so he vibrated quickly. At this time, Meyer was a little surprised. This sword has been dead in his hand for so many years. Why is Gong Yi now alive when he sees her? It's because he met one, and the attributes are different. Complementary. The sword, or because of encountering Gong Yi, this moment made Mayer feel a little unhappy in his heart. But, after all, this matter is also a fact. If he is capable, he will not be at this stage. But at this time, Mayer also planned to take advantage of this good opportunity to quickly develop a relationship with the devil, so Mayer pulled out the evil sword from the ground without hesitation. Also made some of Mayer's excitement to be mentioned the highest. I have to say that this really made me feel a little helpless. At this time, apart from being excited, I don't have any other thoughts, but I am just like a hairy boy. Maybe this kind of mood is needed when the man and the sword are united, and this is the only thing that can do it all. Remember to hold your breath and feel the existence of this sword spirit under construction. Every sword has its own sword spirit. Only after you really find his position can you achieve the same mind. After hearing this, Mayer also fell silent, holding the sword quietly, and said nothing. Compared with the previous time, it can be said to be very quiet. At this time, Gong Yi couldn't help but be satisfied. Nodding, this is indeed something that I hadn't considered. But now it seems that I like her quite a bit, and she must be focused in everything she does. Only in this way can she gain the trust and approval of others. And now he is the one who has taken the initiative to ask to learn such a move as the combination of people and swords. If he taught him and he didn't learn it, he might make himself even more angry. The sword energy is constantly condensing, and it seems that Mayer and the devil's sword can really cooperate this time. Mayer opened his eyes while holding the sword. He felt the flames ignited the entire sky, and a meteorite fell into the sea. It actually caused a situation similar to a big war. At this time, Gong Yi smiled. It was because of the condensation of his sword energy that the meteorite fell. The moment he fell into the sea, Gong Yi had already turned those water droplets that were about to fly to Little Fox Island with water condensation. It's like a tsunami. So at this time, Gong Yi still thought about it. No matter how much he wanted to encourage Mayer to train this man and sword in oneness, and then choose an appropriate stage, otherwise when something went wrong, who would take the responsibility, and this by then Mayer had found a certain pattern. Don't be in a hurry for quick success in this kind of thing. You have to come and go slowly. After all, there is a lack of tacit understanding between you and this demon. You are really running, and will you be able to further develop to some other stages? Believe me, you can slowly in this devil sword box. Treat her a little bit every day, don't mess with her casually. Onto the floor. Chapter 1095, Repair. When he heard this sentence, Mayer couldn't help scratching his head embarrassedly. But there are some things that Mayer can't control, but now the running in between the two can definitely be done. Gong Yi looked at the sword in his hand at this time. If Lan Ying has been using it, if it stays in this state, will there be any damage on it? After restoring it to its original state, Gong Yi asked him if there was anything wrong with the state. It's nothing, but I still feel a little refreshed. Maybe it's because I changed a body, but this might be a good thing. In short, you can hone some other feelings, which is naturally a good thing. Besides, letting Lan Yuxian go this time won't help. You guys, there's nothing wrong with trying to do something for you. After hearing this, Gong Yi was relieved, but at the same time he didn't let his guard down because of this matter, but that he should have lied to himself. So what should be done? After all, because Lan Yuxian was let go, in fact, Lan Ying still feels guilty for a few people, but at least for a short time, Luo Zipping and the little foxes on this island are safe, and he can also bring Shilu in this place. Construction continues. Moreover, Shiliu's brother also stuffed Gong Yi with something before he left, which is said to be related to the four emperor thieves, because Marshal Tucci also cooperated with him before. Of course, after opening the note, in addition to being moved, I also felt a little more grateful. I didn't expect that Shilu's brother would know what he was thinking about. That was overwhelming. At that time didn't matter to Luo Zipping, and it could even be said that the clothes were in a state of being. Okay, so from that time on, Gong Yi already had some doubts. Is he a person from that world? Although they say that the design style is the same, there seems to be a slight deviation in personality and some rare perspectives. After all, people like designers are the fruits of their own labor. I wish others would enshrine them as treasures, but Luo Ziping's performance was beyond expectations. If that's the case, let's go to Aruma, tell us that we are going to leave soon, and ask her if Bobo wants to come back together. Our gate is young. Open. After hearing this, the blue eye socket couldn't help Yuhi, because he knew that maybe Bobo would not come back this time, because he had found the real person, and Bobo could be formed from a small fox humans, during this period, cannot do without the help of other clansmen. If he can continue to survive in this place, it will definitely be a great benefit for his ability improvement, but this group of people must be reluctant to bear him, and they had no choice but to run over. At this time, Aruma still drinking, Bobo Yi said goodbye, while telling Bo what to eat and what to pay attention to, and basically everything that can be said has been said for him. Who was standing behind her and was about to take Alma back home. After hearing the two of them talking, she couldn't help but covered her mouth and tried not to make any noise, and tears fell down her face like this. After the fox saw Lan Ying's expression, he couldn't help but jumped away in silence. There is no way for them to manage so many things, and this new little fox actually has no feelings for them, because there are many people coming and going in this place, one more and one less, only one. It's just a matter of quantity. The real mind and some perceptions have no influence, but this time is different for Bobo. This is her hometown, the only place she can have sustenance, but Aruma still hopes Bobo was able to set off with them again. Just when Aruma wanted to fight for the second retention, she suddenly found that Lan Ying appeared on the side, and rushed up and grabbed her arm, pulling herself away from this place. Confused, I had no idea why he would appear in this place. After all, at this time, for me, I hoped to persuade Bobo to leave with me, but after turning the corner, he suddenly stopped and stood in front of me with some firmness in his eyes. Look. She finally returned to his home. Let's not always use this method to threaten him, and it's not impossible without him on the boat. Chapter 1096. Life. Although the fun has been cut in half, you should also consider that he has found his family and should live her own life, rather than drifting on this sea like us. We do not have family members or because the chances of finding family members are too small, but he is different, he has a better life worth living. Why must he continue to spend with us in this place? This sentence directly confused what Aruma said, but I couldn't hear it. Lan Ying was actually trying to persuade herself to give up calling Bobo back. You must know that you leave this place and go to the island. Looking for Bobo was also approved by Lan Ying. After all, she also really wanted Bobo to come back. Why did she suddenly change her mind at this time? But seeing that she has become, there are some Yuhi's swollen eyes, Aruma also fell silent. What is she talking about at this time? Sister, it seems a little inhumane. After all, Bobo has already gone back, and there is no need for him to force him to do some other things. And Gong Yi should also think the same way. The appearance and everything are carried out on this small island. Before with Gong Yi and the others, it may be because he has always protected her and did not make him suffer too much. Therefore, before he came back, he didn't even learn the skills like changing shape, but in fact Gong Yi and the others didn't know that Bobo turned out to be a sea fox. I understand, go back. The two of them went back in despair, while Gong Yi and Mayer stood on the deck watching their figures, and found that the two of them appeared at the entrance of the village on the other side. At the beginning, Gong Yi was more excited. It should be Bobo. Come back with me too. It wasn't until he saw the two of them that they were empty and nothing. At this time, Gong Yi realized that it seemed that this time Bobo was determined to stay in this small place and accompany his comrades, but he didn't. As the head of this child, there is no way I can accommodate her little fox, and I still have this boat waiting to come back home to condolence to my parents, Mayor, and I also learned something this time. The skill of controlling water has not had time to practice. So after Gong Yi and the others were in this port for 2 days, they left the place where the little fox was stationed after saying goodbye to Luo Shiliu and Shiliu's brother. The building has been repaired, and the sculpture has been standing. So a few people don't have any more foundations to go, otherwise the things will not be understood at that time, but at the same time, it also makes the marketing reluctant to part, although I said that for so long, I haven't been that much to Bobo. Much attention. But at least they are people who travel with them, and I also like this little fox very much, and often secretly stuff her some delicious food. Isn't this enough to prove the affection between the two people, and I can't see it either. Out, Aruma also likes Bobo very much. This was also a common topic between the two of them before, and this is the reason why everyone on the boat can get along with such a happy atmosphere. Even at the moment of parting, Mayer stood on the deck where he was leaning, and then faced the lake with the demon sword in his hand. Since the last time Gongyi hinted to himself, Mayer has gotten a lot better with this devil's sword, and even they have improved a lot. They do and take this thing directly into that overtime on the boat, and also instead of using this kind of thing to get some fruit, it is really used as a sword, which can solve many problems. Gongyi was naturally very relieved to see such a thing, but on this day, when Mayer was wiping his sword, he suddenly saw a furry figure running over from the other side of the strait. But at this time Gongyi was already commanding Aluma, and slowly started to sail, and at this time Lanying had already raised the sails to a half-full state, and Mayer kept waving at Aluma above, motioning him to stop the boat first. At this time, Aruma gestured to Gongyi's side again. At this time, Gongyi hurriedly stopped the boat, and Mayer took a closer look and realized that it was Bobo chasing after him. At this time, he cheered and jumped to the other end of the bed. Lanying and the others also ran over. After seeing Bobo's figure, several people couldn't help but be very excited. There were even tears in their eyes. At this moment, when Bobo rushed up, Aruma was a bear hug, but that was also rushing up. Chapter 1097, Depression. At this moment, everyone was excited for her to come back. After all, Bobo is also a pistachio for them on this ship. If he disappears, they don't know how long they will be depressed, just like Aruma a while ago. I kept looking for him, but he never wanted to come back. However, at that time, the atmosphere among several people was very low, even Aruma was the same. Usually Aruma was cheerful, but in those 2 days, she kept losing her temper. If you are happy, you will find someone to lose your temper, but generally you don't get angry with Lanying, but at the same time Gongyi is caught in the middle and gets angry. Moreover, Mayer was also very angry at the time, and the two of them didn't say anything more when they met head to head. Occasionally, Shiryu would come to give some things. Seeing the two of them fighting like chickens and eggs, he couldn't help frowning. Then the next day Shiryu's older brother will come over to coordinate the relationship. Because Gongyi has to take care of some other things, naturally he has no time to take care of all of them, and at this time Gongyi also discovered that basically all problems are caused by Bobo, and then in addition, Mayer was actually practicing his demon sword for the past 2 days. After all, it is actually very difficult to use that thing when you are not proficient. It's like a move like the unity of the human and the sword. It is also because of the relationship between him and Shilu that he trusts himself wholeheartedly, which allows him to successfully do this scene. Otherwise, I am afraid that it will be difficult to practice for a long time. After all, the level of trust between the two parties is different. And there must be a sword spirit in the devil's sword, but Mayer hasn't been able to dig out that. It's just a sword spirit, and at this moment, Gongyi also discovered another point. If he guessed correctly, in this at that time, Mayer should have cultivated a certain tacit understanding, but it just takes a certain amount of time. But today, after Bobo came back, everything is back on the right track, everyone is in a happy mood, like Aruma, who has been quarreling with Mayer, but this time it is quiet. I can't wait to give Bobo a quiet and peaceful world. At this time, also made a lot of delicious food for him. Seeing this scene, Gongyi couldn't help but shake his head and feel ashamed. Still not as good as a little fox. But after the transformation, Bobo is really cute. A young boy appears in front of Lanying every day. It is not difficult to see that Lanying must like him very much. Of Aluma on the side. The two of them almost got into a fight because who was going to cook for Bobo before. At this time, Gong Yi didn't sighed freely. Obviously there was a cook on board. They have to cook by themselves, in order to express their feelings. When did they treat their captain so well? But after thinking about it, let it go. Some people are scrambling to make food for themselves, but they still let themselves have some. I can't believe it. What if they put medicine in it? What other ways and ideas do you have to cook for yourself? But I still prefer such a quiet and peaceful atmosphere, which is much better than the outbreak of the gunpowder war every day before, and during this period of time, the admiral has not caught up. I don't know because of Gong Yi's addition, it's because of some other reasons. But it must be a good thing at this time. If the admiral catches up, it will definitely take longer to deal with them. After all, they are the real rulers of this ocean. If something goes wrong, they must be the ones who will solve it. Furthermore, Gong Yi had to be arrested for a long time. Now his worth has changed from 600 million to 700 million, because of a later incident. One day they were patrolling the sea and were going to take Mayor home when a ship belonging to the admiral was suddenly seen from the side. At the beginning, a few people hadn't reacted yet, but after all, as a crew member on the watchtower, the first one found on Aruma must have been able to discover this at the first time. And at the same time, the admiral didn't seem to want to give them a chance to react, so he increased the power of the boat and came over. This should be the most elite unit among them. I don't know when they discovered their hiding place, or discovering one of their travel routes. However, at this time, Gong Yi showed his astonishing combat effectiveness. Although he did not let his companions find out, it was obvious that the direction of the naval admiral's ship had become more and more deviated from their position. The track of the ship, as if being dragged away by something. Chapter 1098, Water Art. But at this time, the first person to discover this phenomenon was actually Bobo. After all, this skill was also learned on their island. A stranger once came to their village with such a spell to look for something, and during the 2 days he stayed, the village chief showed himself some memories of his predecessors, that is, his parents' generation. The real enemies basically have some numbers in their hearts, and when the time comes, they can settle accounts with them. But I just don't know when it will be ahead, and I don't want to use revenge to fill the rest of my life, so I still decided to leave with them. But this is not the first time I have seen such a technique. One of the men who came to this place to find treasures has such skills, but everyone who fails to find treasures in this place has to experience a pain, that is, to leave your skills behind. And this thing will turn into a fruit under the precipitation of time. It seems that this time someone on this ship must have eaten the fruit by mistake. It is not to say that there is any harm, but that thing can be regarded as a semi-finished product. After all, it's not yet time. If you look at it from their memory, that the water dew fruit has only been stored for less than 200 years. Maybe there are other things in it that can't be taken. But also, at the moment when the admiral's ship sank, the whole ship was filled with cheering shouts. Looking at their more joyful expressions, Gong Yi's whole face was full of satisfaction expressions. For themselves, as long as they can make them happy is enough. It was also through his smile that the little fox quickly discovered that he was the one who took away the fruit of the water art. He had to do his best to remind him, but it didn't mean that he couldn't avoid it. Not that it will die, but it just needs a way to fix it. Therefore, the current Gong Yi may need to increase the horsepower to solve this matter. Otherwise, when the time is up, it may be eaten by this sea monster. After all, these people in this child can't think of it. Things, and many more. So one night, Bobo entered Gong Yi's bedroom. At this time, Gong Yi did not turn off the light. After hearing footsteps, he sighed, took it down from the table, and turned around. Looking towards the door. Who was standing in that place, also thought this time that it was Bobo who was looking for something to do with him. So he pulled a stool to let him sit down. At this time Bobo shook his head, indicating that he didn't need to do anything, just wanted to talk to him about something. Have you ingested a water Jew fruit by mistake before? Although that thing is good, it has certain side effects. If you really pay for that thing, you still need to find a place with sunlight. For about 3 hours a day, you can also find some other people to accompany you, or if it is not you, you should find the victim on this boat. After hearing this sentence, Gong Yi didn't ask nervously, will this thing have any side effects? Actually, there are no side effects, it's just, there will be problems at that time. After all, this is one of the fruits replaced by our side as a spell left by those who searched for treasures in the past, and then that tree can slowly transform these things into a story. But the water juice fruit that was eaten was only less than 200 years old. It can be said that it should be a semi-finished product. If there is a problem at that time, it must be solved comprehensively, but now that he has left, the little one there is definitely no way for the island to solve it. After hearing this, Gong Yi pretended to understand and nodded his head, but he was still in his heart worrying about his own problems. He knew that there were not so many good things that could be delivered to his door in vain, but he had to say this. After eating the Jew fruit, the whole person's ability to control this ocean has also been gradually upgraded. At this time, Bobo realized that she should have understood what she said, so she took it to the door and left without disturbing Gong Yi's next thoughts. But Gong Yi can only choose the second method, but wanting to bask in the sun in Hainan for 3 consecutive days can be said to be a topic that can't do anything. After all, there are too few places with sun at sea. And they are all located in places of 17,750,000. If you want to send Mayor back, all the places you have to go are covered with dark clouds. It can even be said that there is no port that can be docked, let alone those the so-called sunshine. So at this time, he couldn't help but give him some headaches, but he didn't dare not believe what Bobo said. Chapter 1099. Embarrassment first. So at this time, Gong Yi went directly to Mayor to discuss the matter with him, saying that he had some other problems to solve. If you want to go home, it may take a while, and Mayor naturally doesn't mind, as long as you leave the shore and sail on the sea, there is basically no problem. Therefore, the group of them detoured a long way, from the sunny area of the strait to Mayor's house. I have to say that it is really a very prosperous port and city. Not like the one Mayor described. But on the way, Gong Yi has already trained some of these water tricks very well, and also avoided an attack by the Admiral of the Navy. It is not difficult to see that they must be very angry, otherwise they will not put their own worth as easy to mention from June 1st. But someone at this port saw him, but no one dared to report to the Admiral's side, unless after he left, those people might say a few words for those reward money, otherwise they should not have such a thing. Courageous. After all, although he is not a particularly famous person, at least Gong Yi's name can be considered to be able to go ocean for a while in this place. Also during dinner, Gong Yi heard the next table talking about Lan Yuxian. I didn't expect that he actually wanted to go back to that 4 emperor thieves, but was rejected by the other party. This is what surprised Gong Yi the most. How is it possible that the two are not in a mutually beneficial and win-win situation? How could they refuse unilaterally, and the 4 emperor thieves didn't always want it? If Lan Ying said it was broken if Lan Yuxian goes this route, how can I get in touch with Lan Ying? At this time, Gong Yi subconsciously looked at Lan Ying's side. The one who brought the bowl to the side, brought them a plate of dishes, wanted to inquire about such news, and motioned them to come over to speak in a low voice. At this time, Lan Ying didn't have any doubts. One was just asking for news, but it was not the case. It was just because she was afraid that Lan Ying would be anxious, and then she was stunned again, so Gong Yi had to do a thorough job. Choice. The last time he let people go, he didn't care much about him. If something went wrong again, something would definitely happen. Moreover, what Lan Yuxian did this time was a good thing. I didn't expect that he would actually want to return to the 4 emperor thieves. If he really established a relationship with them, I'm afraid it would be another person who can be traded at will. Stuff. For him, this is not a daughter, but something that can be used and traded at any time. This has already made Gong Yi very unhappy. After that, several people couldn't help but feel some righteous indignation, especially Bobo. Although it is the first time I know such a thing, it is also the first time I know about interpersonal issues, but it is indeed in line with some of their shared views. After all, Bobo, little foxes and humans actually do not. What's the difference? It's just looks. I really didn't expect that man to be so maddened. If he didn't mean to support me that time, how could I let her go and let that man go? No one thought that Lan Yuxian would be let go like this. But it can be regarded as a dream come true for him, not to mention that he should feel guilty towards him for so many years. Gong Yi nodded at the side, then stood up and said a word. That's right, this time, it's a favor for him. Next time, Lan Yuxian won't have such good luck. It's best not to let us encounter him with some bad behavior, otherwise I'm afraid I'm sorry Lan Ying. We must also act. Aruma agrees on the side, and Bobo on the side has some doubts. Why do such a thing? Maybe it is some solutions between them. I am naturally unqualified at this point. Perseverance. After all, the village chief on the small island seemed to have solved it this way. Either expel them from this small island, or else use another method to solve it, but no matter which method it is, it will eventually converge into a final, particularly good solution, but this so-called solution is also different for every different person. Lan Ying may have his own reasons for doing this, but after Ant's death, it's not easy for a few people to interfere with his emotions, because they are afraid that something will go wrong with him. After all, a few people are not so-called psychiatrists. Chapter 1100. What should we do this time? If we say that he committed the following crime, we will definitely solve it, but what should we explain to Lan Ying? We see and say that we are thinking about harming his father again. I felt that he was obviously in the last incident. There was a grudge with us for a while. After hearing this, Gong Yi was also silent for a while. That's true, but there's no other way. He can't let that man play havoc in this place. Maybe a few people can tell Lan Ying the news, and then let him himself to decide how to do it. After all, the real fairness is for the master to be in his own hands. After all, he is the last relative of this Lan Yuxian. As long as he decides, basically the fate of the latter half of his life will be sentenced. It is not ruled out that Lan Ying will have sympathy or pity for his behavior. But I only hope that it is one of the few who hope that he can do things fairly and justly. In this way, the casualties among those civilians can also be reduced. After all, after hearing the words of these people, Gong Yi has a few more impressions of Lan Yuxian. A different aspect. Usually, the four emperor thieves are. They live by robbing some of the resources of the surrounding civilians, and even robbing some of their savings. Some people come to conflict because of such things, and they commit suicide when they can't bear the blow. I really didn't expect them to do such a thing, and I didn't expect Lan Yuxian to continue to do this kind of killing and plundering after being released. It's gone, but now I don't have such a thing. I don't want to intervene too much in this. Lan Ying's housework should be handled by him, but if he can't do it, Gong Yi will also solve it for them at a critical juncture. This matter has become negotiable. At this level, several people will take care of Lan Ying in the next few days. But he didn't mention it, until one night, when Aruma and Bobo were celebrating his return, he accidentally said something while drinking. Lan Ying didn't know that, after the man left, he didn't know it. Didn't do anything good, and even went back to find that. 4 emperor thieves. But I didn't expect that. The one I was trying so hard to protect not only betrayed me at this moment, but even planned to come back to attack Gong Yi and the others again. Under such double pressure, I felt a little overwhelmed. But I also felt a little impatient. But, for me, some perspectives were different, but during the period of departure, Mayer was still very happy. It's been a long time since he wanted to go back and take a look at himself. It was the first time he had such an opportunity, so naturally he didn't take it. Every time Lan Ying saw the smiling face on Mayer's face, she couldn't help but feel a little sad. It would be great if my family could be like him, and it would be worth looking forward to, but whenever I calm down and think back on all this, I can't help but feel that after some problems have been magnified, they are easy to solve. Just like the matter between himself and Lan Yuxian, he even sent a letter to himself in the middle, and only saw the letter for a split second. Without even reading, Lan Ying directly burned the thing. The letter was about to come out. The light of the spark instantly reflected Lan Ying's face. Very Yuhi. Someone came in outside, looked at when there was a fire inside. I rushed to put out the fire. At first, Aruma thought that the speaker was off, but when she saw the tears on her face and the little pigeon beside her, she realized that it was just a letter sent by someone else, so why would she let her such resentment? I really didn't think that I shouldn't let it go in the first place. He not only didn't chase and block you, he even wanted to kill you. If I had known that he was thinking like this, I would definitely not let it go past him. At this time, Aruma stepped forward and patted Lan Ying's back lightly, helping him to stop slowly, crying and cursing constantly. We all know that you did it unintentionally, so we didn't plan to blame you at all. We just wanted to settle the account with him, for fear that you would be unhappy when you hear it, so we always do it in secret, not because of dislike you, or because you let go of Lan Yuxian, have a quarrel with you. After hearing this, Lan Yuxian's heart not for so long was finally opened, but then there was a burst of crying. No one would have thought that in such a long life, some things have already become not the same. He has successfully become one of them. Even if it is such a big thing, it cannot destroy the mutual trust between them. At this time, the man also reviewed whether he should trust him more.